Hi everyone, welcome back to Job 1 for All. In this video we are going to talk about how to catch multiple exceptions. So let's go to runtime and we can just create a new class. Runtime test exception. Runtime exception test actually. 04. Okay, so getting started with real scenario. Imagine that you are working with, let's use HTTP requests as one example. You may not know yet, but one day you will probably work with web servers. And usually when we are working with HTTP, we have some status codes because the protocol should tell you what happened in case you have a successful request, in case you have a bad request from a client, in case you have internal server error. So we have several status. So you just go to Wikipedia and you will be able to see all the status codes. And they are, for example, usually divided in families. So we have the 100 family, that's for informational response, 200 family, that usually means success, and we have 300 family for redirection, and we have, for example, in our case would be exceptions, the 400 family. So we have client errors. Let's say that you are supposed to get a name and surname, but for example the client didn't send the surname, so that's a bad request. You were expecting and they did not send. And for example we have also the 500 family errors. So these are server errors. So there are several things that can happen. So for example, imagine that you request something but your server cannot connect to a database. So it's not the client's problem, it's your server problems. So you would get like a 500. So each one of these exceptions, they should be handled differently. And that's why we have options to have multiple catches. Let's do a simulation here. Let's work with runtime's exception because they are easier. But in general, it works for both of them the same way, exceptions and runtime exceptions. Let's start with, for example, let's say that we have array index of random session. So let's here. So this is the first one, and we can add here inside, and then this one. So we have this option. If we have array index out of on exception, we are going to be handling that inside this catch. Copy this, and let's add like 4 more. So let's say the second one is index out of one exception, and I'm going to rename it as well. And this one will be illegal argument exception. And this one, arithmetic exception. As you can see, we have multiple catch blocks. And the catch, the way they will be executed, it depends on the exception that is being from the trying. So for example, if I throw array index out of one exception, what's going to happen? Java will try to find one of these catch block in the sequence that they are, and it will try to match and see if through polymorphism or maybe just directly the reference object, in this case like we have here, it can assign the exception object to this variable. If we execute this code now, you will notice that the line number 8 will be executed. If we change the exception, you will see that the second one will be now executed. Why does that happen? Because the first one cannot get the object, and then Java tried the next one. And we can do the same for all of them. For example, arithmetic exception is the last one. So we know what happens if there is one exception, for example, runtime exception, and we don't have a catch block for that. Well, as you can imagine, your program is going to crash because there is no catch handling that exception. And we can add here as well, but you have to be very, very careful because there is one rule. When you are working with multiple catches, you have to be careful with the inheritance tree. So for example, all the exceptions here, they are subclasses of runtime exception. So basically, all these classes, they are runtime exceptions. So I'm trying to execute this catch. Let's say that we have a different runtime exception. So it's going to try this one, this one, this one, this one. And if none of them matches, it's going to be linked, referenced by the most generic one, the father of all. That's the runtime exception. So this means that's like a safe net. If nothing of this works, it will just go into the last catch. But this makes us face a problem in case you change the order. If I add the most generic exception at the beginning, you have several compilation errors. And why is that? Because all the runtime exceptions that we have down here from line 10 until line 16, they are subclasses of runtime exceptions. So it doesn't matter each of these exceptions that we have here, it doesn't matter where they are or what kind of object they are expecting, because the runtime exception will always be the one catching everything. It doesn't matter what kind of exception it doesn't matter what kind of runtime exception, to be more technical correct, we throw here, the catch that we have right below will be the one executed. And Java knows that, and that's why we have compilation error saying, hey, all the exceptions, they are already caught by the runtime exception that we have up here. So the rule is all the most generic ones, the superclasses, they should be after. And it's the same for the index out of bound and array index out of bound. They are in the same inheritance tree. So array index of bound is a subclass of index out of bound. So basically, if I invert this order, we are going to have a problem here, because this exception will never catch anything, because the index out of bound exception caught all the exceptions that could possibly be array index of bound exception. And this same concept works for exceptions do tipo checked. Let's create here private static void may throw exception. So just as one tiny example, we can have multiple throws. So I can say, for example, this method is going to throw SQL exception and maybe file not found exception. So as you can see, we have a method that may throw two exceptions. And when I add this call here in my main method, we have to catch them. So adding try and catch SQL exception, you will notice that we still have one problem. And why is that? SQL exception and file not found exception, they are both under the exception. In this case, file not found exception is under IO exception, that is under exception itself. But this means that all of them, both of them, they are checked exceptions. We have to check all of them, and I have to handle all of them. And these exceptions, they are not in the same inheritance tree. So you need to have both catches. Now, for the file not found exception, you can have another option. Let's handling the most generic, that's the IO exception, and it will work the same way. Or another option will be to have only one catch, adding here exception. So remember, by the time you are adding here, this is going to catch everything. That's why we have the same error down here. You can remove all of them. So when multiple catches are useful, when you have to handle the exceptions differently. Otherwise, you can have the most generic one, and basically if you are just printing the logs, just have it here. So that's it I had to tell you. Let's continue with more exceptions in the next video. See ya.